Hello and welcome to Shop Talk with Dan the Man. Today's video we're going to go over the 1-year review of this Ridgid trim router. Stay tuned to find out more. Hello, if you're new to this channel, my name is Dan Shannon. I enjoy woodworking as a hobby and being out in the shop. On this channel, dive deep into my shop as we explore tools and tool reviews, as well as chatting about everything related to woodworking. If this grabs you by the tool belt, please subscribe to my channel if you want more videos like this. Hello and welcome to Shop Talk with Dan the Man. If you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, thanks for coming back. In today's video, I'm just going to dive into this. This is Ridgid's trim router. It's not their current edition because this is a year old, but this is model number R860443. And I do have a review on this router, some cutting that I do with it with the bits, and basically all the features, etc. You can click on that link if you want to see that. But this is in fact just over a year old. I've had it, and I just wanted to give you an update on the quality. Basically, has it held up over that past year? The bits, working with different bits, and pros and cons in that year, the different pros with using this, the different cons that I've found using this trim router, and then overall thoughts. Would I buy it again? Is it something you should purchase? And basically, has it held up? So let's jump into some pros. Okay, so after owning this router for a year, there's quite a few pros with this router. I would say very easy bit changeover. So you have your wrench and you just press on a button on the front here and then just use this wrench to loosen the shaft, and then you slide in your new bit. So very quick changeover for swapping out router bits. So I really like that. Ridgid has a great setup when it comes to swapping out your bits. Another thing I liked after having this for a year is how it feels in the hand. It's very small, very compact. Sometimes if you're doing, like, say, a shelf and you just want to do a nice little decorative piece of trim on that, this is great, very portable. It's got different speeds, so depending on what you're doing for the project, you can adjust the speed level on the router. So I really like that. And after a year of using it non-stop, really, I've had multiple projects that I've done with this. Some on the YouTube channel. I did a plant stand with this router. I've done a serving table with this router, and a bunch of other projects off this this channel. But this definitely worked very well. I didn't find it overheated at all. It got a little bit warm. Any tool that you work any length of time with is going to get a little bit warm in your hand. But I really do love the fact that it's good for any 18-volt battery. So whether you have an older generation 4 amp hour, or a newer generation 2 amp hour, or the very latest, not quite the latest, they came out with this cableless battery, but this is the one just before that max output. I do notice a difference in the battery performance, and while I'm on that for batteries, I really enjoy the run time that this gets. You're not going to get a crazy run time out of a 2 amp hour. It is a router. It does take a lot of power to run, especially the RPMs running this bit, but I will say it's definitely not underpowered. Now, would I take this and run it through a piece of hardwood really fast? No. It would bog down. It does bog down. I've done it, and it doesn't work that well. But you know, other than that, for pros, I can't really think of anything. Dust collection wise, does it have, there's a little piece you can put in here, protects from the shavings coming at you, but I like to have it fully open so I can see my workpiece as I'm going. You can leave that in there if you want, but I enjoy watching the bit itself, so I can see, say if you're doing an edge, you can actually see the bit run along through this opening versus having that piece of plexi there. I do realize that's for safety, so your fingers aren't close to the bit, but I do enjoy seeing where it is on my project. So take it off, leave it on, it's up to you. But other than that, for pros, great adjustments on this router. If you want to gradually take it up and down, you do have this dial, or you can do undo the clamp and do a quick adjustment up and down. So after owning it for a year, performance wise, for the pro, it definitely checks off all the boxes, and I've never had an issue with the performance part. So that's pretty much it. Easy, to kind of recap, easy changeover for my bits. Performance has the different variable speeds, and the adjustment is very easy to use on this. So let's jump into the cons after owning this for a year. So cons. Okay, so really there's only a couple of cons I can think of with this router, and after owning it for a year, it's very low on the cons list. So the first con is, I would say, the battery. Now this could be more on the user, myself, than the actual router, but a lot of times I find if I have, say, a 2 amp hour, basically just the 2, 4 not really an issue, but unless I have this fully charged, all the lights lit up and it's fully juiced, I find if I put it on here and I start to do, say, an edge on a project, it doesn't take long before the battery gives up. And one thing on a router, if you've ever used a router for any length of time in your shop, you never want the motor to slow down. You always want consistent speed as you're traveling around the perimeter of a project. You never want to get about halfway and then have the thing bog out, because then you got lots of tear out and it could leave some burn marks, or you know, just kind of wreck your project. So you want to make sure your battery is fully charged before you put it on here to start a project. Now that might say common sense, or have that in the common sense department, but sometimes when you're getting busy, or if you grab one of these batteries and you're like, oh, it's only down a bar or 2 bars, it should be fine, lots of power left. Yes, maybe for a drill or a tool that doesn't take as much power, or it doesn't matter if it slowly goes down. So if you're drilling in a screw and it slowly runs out of power, no big deal. Just grab another battery and continue driving that screw. But in a router, you definitely want to keep that performance on the project very consistent. So I would say jumping up, doesn't have to be a 4, you know, you can still stick with the 2, but I generally use a 4 when I'm running this router, just to make sure I have that extra power that's applied. So that's kind of the only con. There is another con. Now, once again, this is more user issue than the actual router. So each router has a certain horsepower or a certain amperage for the motor itself. If you get into a tabletop or a router like this, it's plugged in full power. This has like 3.5 horsepower. It's a very strong motor, runs very well in your application for a tabletop router. But when you get into a trim router, obviously there's going to be a power difference. So with that power difference comes an issue with cutting into with a bit hardwood. So any one of these bits, a lot of times for A, safety, and 2, for your motor to keep the life lasting, you want to take your router bit and as you're going around the perimeter of your project, you want to slowly engage the bit. So you don't want to put it on full bore and have the bit sticking out. You always want to do it gradual, so when you apply it to the project and do the perimeter, it's only biting off a little bit of material at a time. Once you do the first pass, of course, you bring your plate up, which exposes the router bit a bit more, and then you do the perimeter again. So that's how you want to conduct each time you use the router, because of the project and the power that you have from the motor itself. Well, sometimes if you run into hardwood, especially hardwood, if you get into walnut, anything that's really hard to cut into, even for a very sharp blade or a router that's super high performance, you're going to run into some power issues just because of the material that you're cutting. So I highly recommend, if you're running this on walnut, we'll just use walnut for example, as you're running the perimeter of your project, definitely don't bring this down too far. You just want to take off just a smidge each time, just a little bit, and then adjust your depth on your router bit. There's nothing worse than taking off too much, and I've done this. I wasn't experienced at the time. I just started off using a router. I had the bit all the way, because you look at the picture here and you're like, okay, I want that profile, perfect. Just bring the bit all the way down and then fire it into the project and do the outline, because you're like, that's the result I want, so I might as well just do it full bore. Well, yeah, not a good idea. The last time I did that, the router kind of snagged up, powered down, and kind of like gave it a little, yeah, not a good thing. So I would say with your router, you definitely want to ease up on it, and that's a user thing. That's not the router's fault. You don't want to overwork the motor, so just take off a little bit of material. Now I know it sounds like a broken record, or I sound like a broken record saying that multiple times in this video, but it's very important when you're using the router. So to make this last a long time and to make this perform the way it should perform, you got to follow the router procedures and safety and longevity for your tool by doing it correctly. So this router, I would say for the average person that's doing some trim work, maybe you got a project, you just want to do the perimeter, or you got a shelf, crown molding. There's so many things that a trim router can do, but what I like compared to a tabletop router that I have behind me here is it's cordless, fits in my hand, I can slap a battery on it. If I'm going outside and, for example, I had some deck boards, and the deck boards were rough milled, and they didn't have a rounded over edge. They just had a very straight edge, and it was very rough. So all I did is I took a round over bit, put that in the router, trim router, cordless, went out there with my sawhorses and just ran this along the edge. Gave it that round over profile, and then I can install that on my deck. So perfect. Just because you have this doesn't mean you get rid of this. They both are useful in your shop. They both have their place. And yeah, other than that, I can't think of any cons per se. Like I said, those aren't really quote unquote cons. They're more performance things that you have to accommodate for when you're using. So I think that's pretty much it for, like I said, for cons. Let's jump into some final thoughts. Okay, so some final thoughts on this trim router. I've had this for a year, like I mentioned a few times in this video. Would I purchase this again? If this came across my path, and would I go to the store and buy another one? Absolutely. And there's two reasons why I would buy this router versus maybe a different brand, or you know, kind of what's available out there. And it's up to you and what your platform is. If you have Ryobi platform, or if you have a DeWalt platform, or Makita, or Milwaukee, etc. that would be the platform that you would probably cling to. And in this case, I obviously have a lot of Ridgid tools, so that's the platform that I went with. So that would be the first reason I went with this router. And the second reason I went with this router is it has the LSA. So lifetime service agreement, if you're not familiar with that, basically you have 90 days to register. They cover the tool, the parts, and anything mechanical that can go wrong with it for life. And same with their batteries. You purchase a battery, you register it, lifetime. So as long as you can pull the trigger, they guarantee the batteries. So for me, platform, like I say, I already have Ridgid tools, so this made sense to jump into their router with the Ridgid lineup. And probably the third one would be, I really enjoy the size of this machine. Stats wise, I didn't go around and looking at different horsepower, different RPMs, all those different things. I didn't really sit down and chart that out. I basically seen a trim router, seen it was Ridgid, seen I had the batteries, and basically locked onto that. So maybe put some thoughts down below. What kind of routers do you own? Do you have a Ryobi? Do you have a Milwaukee, DeWalt, etc.? Leave some comments down below. Maybe you didn't buy a Ridgid one because you know, it might not have been the specs that you were looking for. Maybe you had one of these and you had issues with it. I know there's one YouTuber, 731 Woodworks. He had it smoking, and he basically was using his router a bunch of times. He had it for a long time. It started smoking out the side, and it basically just caught fire internally, and it was just done. So he contacted Ridgid. You know, they sent it off to the parts department. They fixed it. Still had the original chassis. Still smelled like kind of that smoke burnt smell. Still usable. He could still use it. But I think in the end, they actually sent him a new router, or maybe two, just to cover that off. But they did more than what they were supposed to for the fixing, and they looked after him. And at the end of the day, that's all you can ask for. You have a tool, you use a tool, and as long as they come good in the warranty side, what better can you get right there? So yeah, just leave some comments below about your router, and yeah, start up a conversation. If you haven't already and you'd like to be part of the Shop Talk family, please click down below on the subscribe button, and please give me a thumbs up, and I will catch you on the next video. Have yourself a great day.